All right. First of all, thank you for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being asked.
Yeah, the first question is, and when I interview people about their team, I ask them, "How did you become a Green Bay Packers fan?"
I've only been a Packers fan since I can remember anything in my life. My grandfather took me to a game when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
Is my earliest memory not only of the Packers but in my life. Just being around the Packers is something I was born into. My grandfather had season tickets at Lambeau. We watched it as a family essentially every Sunday. My dad and I never missed a game while I was growing up. We watched it each and every week, and it just became a real kind of core part of not just being a fan of the Packers, but of my life. It's something that I identify really strongly with. Like I said, it really speaks to family for me. My grandmother and I would talk about the Packers all the time. She would talk about going to the Ice Bowl or seeing like the games before they even had a stadium. And it's just, like I said, it's something that's been kind of with me since I can remember anything.
Jeez, okay. That is a long time.
A long time. Like I said, most of my life, it's just it's
Jeez.
how I've
Okay.
been.
Yeah, so next one is, how did you get started with your Cheesehead TV?
Well, I met my co-founder Corey Banky at school. We both went to North Carolina School of the Arts, and
Okay.
we were both actors, and we both moved to New York to be actors, and we were for a while. Um, but we've always both loved the Packers, and when we were at school, we would talk about them all the time to the point where I think we annoyed people around us. Like we would be at parties and we'd be arguing about Brett Favre, and people would tell us to shut up. So then when we moved to New York, when you move to the city, it's hard because people live in different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And Corey and I live pretty far away from each other.
Okay.
But we kept talking on the phone each and every week about the Packers.
Hmm.
And finally, Corey said, we should do a podcast. And I said, what's a podcast? Because it was 2007 and no one was doing podcasts.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
true.
we started, I was writing a little bit online, and
Oh,
we started the podcast, and it just kind of took off from there.
oh, wow, okay, nice. Yeah, I do watch you every single week.
Thank you.
I don't know how you did it, but I didn't know how you got Donald Driver to come on.
Oh, the Donald Driver stream was amazing, no doubt
Yeah,
about it. That happened. We know some people close to Donald, and they had wanted to do something a little extra special for the event that they were hosting in Milwaukee,
okay.
and so we started talking to them about possibly doing a live stream and doing the kind of game watch-alongs that we do each and
Mhm.
every week during the season. And Donald was down to do it, and we flew to Milwaukee and we did it, and it was amazing. I will say, I said as soon as it was over, and I called my girlfriend back here in New York, and I said that was one of the most surreal experiences of my life because, I mean, as a fan, before Cheesehead TV even was a thing, I mean, I was watching Donald Driver and cheering for him, and I was a monster fan of the player. In the ensuing years, I've met him a couple of times and I've gotten to know him a little bit, and
Wow.
even then, I never thought, like, oh yeah, we'd sit down and watch a Packers game together, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
did.
That is so cool.
Very cool. It was a lot of fun, and Donald was great. He was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he sounds like he's a really nice, genuine dude. So,
Very much so. Like there was not a person in the place, and there were like about maybe 50 people there that night, and he spent time with each and every one of them. Really talked and listened and was really open to conversation with everybody. And but then also just so involved in the game. I think it could be real easy in that situation for him to be like, "Oh, I'll do a few minutes with you guys, and then I'm going to go keep doing my business
yeah,
stuff." But he was really into it and really into the game, and I just love watching or knowing that a former Packer who is as revered as he is so into the team still.
yeah,
I love that he's still connected.
oh, yeah. That's amazing. That really
It
is.
really is. It's very cool, no doubt.
Um, One of my subscribers wanted to ask you a question.
Sure.
She asked me to ask you, do you still think the Packers have the home field advantage?
That's a very good question. At Lambeau Field, right? It has certainly changed.
Oh yeah,
When I was younger and the Packers were kind of on the come up, right after they had been so bad for so long,
oh yeah,
Lambeau obviously wasn't much of a home field advantage back in those days, in the 70s and 80s. But
Mhm.
when Holmgren and Favre and company came on board, they certainly made it one. There was that stretch everybody remembers that
Oh yeah,
they had never lost a postseason game at Lambeau
oh yeah,
until the Falcons came in and Michael Vick did his thing.
yeah,
But even then, there was still, I thought, there was a home field advantage at Lambeau Field. I do think a lot of that has disappeared. I don't think it's impossible to recapture it. I think obviously the Packers have to win their home games, but
oh
more
yeah,
importantly, they have to win their home games against division rivals to discourage Vikings fans or Lions fans or Bears fans from making the trek and taking over. Because that's the other thing. You've got a lot of division rival fans coming to Lambeau these days in ways that, and they always have, but it's way more now than it used to be. And I do think part of that is incumbent upon the team to win those games and make the building and Lambeau more of a formidable presence. Because right now, to the question, I don't think it is a decided home field advantage, and I don't think that that means if you have like this really tough place to play that you're going to win all those games. But you certainly want to make it tougher. You certainly
oh,
want people to worry about coming into Lambeau Field,
yeah,
and
of
right now,
course.
I don't think they do.
Um, if you could rank these three QBs, who would you put at 1, 2, and 3?
All right.
Favre, Rodgers, and the quarterback we have now, Love.
And Jordan Love. Well, I think it's a bit unfair to Jordan simply because he's so young, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
just starting out. He's only going to
yeah, of
be
course.
what is his third year as a starter. He would obviously be number 3 for me.
Yeah,
And then if you're talking between Favre and Rodgers as quarterbacks, just as playing the game at the position and doing all the things that are required of you as a quarterback, I'm going to put Brett Favre at number 2, and I'm going to put Aaron Rodgers at number 1.
oh,
And
really?
yeah, I think when you look at the way Aaron took care of the ball and the way Favre turned it over, that's what really separates them. And it doesn't mean that Brett wasn't amazing, because he was a 3-time MVP,
Yeah,
helped him win a Super Bowl, got him to another one. He certainly was one of the greats. There's no doubt there. But the Packers were able to win as many games as they did with Aaron and McCarthy because he was so good with the ball. And I know it would get frustrating watching it live, him taking a sack or throwing it away,
yeah,
but that's being smart. And on top of that, he still threw for all the yards he threw for, all the touchdowns he threw,
he
all of
was.
that. Most of it eclipsed Favre while not turning the ball over. So, yeah, look, they're very different quarterbacks, obviously, and I
Oh,
do think Brett was the right quarterback for his time. I don't think Aaron in that situation would have been as successful as Brett
yeah,
was in the
yeah, I don't think
situation
so either.
that he
Yeah,
comes into. I do think, Aaron picks up the torch there and is certainly excellent with a very good team around him. But I don't know that Aaron does what Brett does if Aaron's in that situation, coming from a long legacy of losing on a team that had a new head coach. No one really knew what to expect. And, not exactly world beaters around him once Sterling Sharp goes down there. So
yeah, of course.
yeah, I think Brett did amazing work. There's no doubt that he is a great. But if you're talking just pure quarterback play, you got to go with Aaron Rodgers at number 1.
So my next question is, how did you feel when we actually got rid of?
Of Aaron? Well, I thought it was a year too late. I thought it was very obvious that the team was kind of holding on. And I
Yeah,
talked about
yeah,
this a lot at CheeseHead TV, where for me, it got frustrating watching a team that so desperately was clinging to this one final chance of getting back to a Super Bowl with their superstar quarterback,
yeah,
right? It just, every move, every season, every game, every playoff game in particular, just felt like this. We're hanging on a cliff by our fingernails and
yeah, of
we're just
course. Yeah,
clawing and hoping and praying we get back. Whereas once they traded Aaron and they handed the keys to Jordan, Yeah, no, it was exciting when we won a playoff game his first year as a starter.
Oh yeah,
No
yeah,
doubt
yeah.
about it. Very kind of disheartening the way the season ended last year with 3 straight losses, losing a playoff game. But you still, as a Packers fan, have to be able to see the difference here. We are on this, we're at the beginning of something. You know, what should be an upward trajectory and hopefully becoming contenders and winning a Super Bowl or
Oh
two,
yeah.
right? As opposed to the last few years with Aaron. I mean, after they had that chance in 2020 at Lambeau against the Buccaneers and they blew that, you pretty much understood that that was probably it, right? But they had a couple years after that where it was like pulling teeth. It just felt
Yeah.
so difficult. Whereas now it might be difficult for different reasons, but at least there's an upward, hopeful trajectory rather than clinging on to the past. That's
I,
how. And when they traded him, that's what it was, like a relief. I felt relief.
well, there was a Packers fan that didn't like the move at all,
Right.
and there was. So yeah, I was on the side of we got a new quarterback. Good.
Right.
I don't need this stress anymore.
Right.
Like, is he gonna come back or
Is
is
he
he gonna?
not? And that's the other thing, right? You spend all off season like, is he or isn't he? Will he or won't he?
And
Enough of that.
it felt like the whole farm situation
All
over
over
again.
again. I agree. Very much so. Although I will say, I think Aaron was a little better about it than Brett was.
Yeah, he was.
Brett really kind of
Yeah,
leaned into it
at
for
least
a
we didn't
long
offer.
time
At least we didn't offer Aaron Rodgers $20 million
to retire, to stay
to
retired.
stay home.
Exactly. Well remembered. Very well remembered.
So I'm like, okay.
It's a step
Yeah.
forward anyway.
But the next question is, some of the fans said we need a bona fide number one receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that?
I think if there had been one on offer, it would have made sense to try and sign him, but I don't know who that would have been. I know the DK Metcalf thing caught fire online. I certainly understood if the Packers would have been in those sweepstakes, but clearly they weren't. The way they traded him to the Steelers and the contract he got, I get the Packers not getting into that, so to speak. And Devontae Adams always felt like kind of more fan fiction than an actual possibility.
Yeah, it was.
So then you look around, and I know last night they signed McCole Hardman, but that's not a number one. That's a guy who's probably going to add a lot of speed and be a return guy, but I don't think he's your bona fide number one. I just think certainly you need somebody to be consistent. And I don't know if that necessarily means you have to have, quote, a number one. I do think the guys they have on hand got to play better, got to hold on to the ball, whether you're talking about Dontavian Wicks or Jaden Reed or whoever. They all dropped the ball way too much last year. And if they just hold on to the football, they're a lot more productive. So I don't know that they need it or they're doomed, right? I think it's easier. I think it's easier if you have one, but I just don't think there has been one on offer when the Packers have been able to acquire players. So I think they'll probably draft somebody in April's draft, not necessarily to come in and, quote, be a number one, but certainly to help and be a perimeter guy and help on the outside. But I think a big key and a big component this year is the guys they have to play better.
You are absolutely right about that. So this upcoming season, where do you think that we should focus the draft on?
Good question. I think because of where the draft is heavy, I suspect we'll see them draft at least one defensive tackle, since the class is I'm not going to say historically deep, but certainly deeper than usual. There's a lot of talent at defensive tackle in this draft class. I do think the Packers, if not maybe at 23, but maybe on day 2. But I do think, we'll see a defensive tackle at some point, especially considering, Kenny Clark is probably playing his last year in Green Bay.
Yeah,
Devontae Wyatt's heading into a final year of his rookie deal. They just need not only reinforcements, but they need, to just make sure that whatever happens next year, they've got players there. I think obviously edge rusher is another area they'll look at. It really is going to depend, I think, on how the board falls. if they do say take a defensive tackle at 23, I wouldn't be surprised to see them trade back up in the second round and get an edge player, because I think for the most part the quality edge players will be gone by pick 50 or so. So I think those are two areas that are pretty obvious, right? There's kind of the Packers' usual MO. They always load up on defense early.
Oh yeah.
I do think they'll draft a wide receiver. I don't think it'll be in the first round. I do think it'll be in the second round if they don't make the move for an edge. Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State is like the guy. If you're talking about a Packers wide receiver, a guy who was born to play in Green Bay, given his game and how he's made up, that makes a lot of sense. And I know a lot of people have asked about cornerbacks, simply because we're pretty sure Jair is going to be moving on.
I think Jair.
I do think the Hobbs signing kind of allows them not to have to reach. They can make sure that, sure, if there is a corner there that's the highest rated player on their board, they can take him, but they don't need it. They can sit there and let the board fall to them. And if it is a corner, fine. But if it's not, they're not in trouble. They've got enough talent on hand between, Keyshawn Nixon, Hobbs, Carrington Valentine. They're going to be okay there. So I think, yeah, they'll probably add one at some point in the draft. But those are probably the major positions I'll see them targeting in April.
And do you think that Brian Gutekunst is on the hot seat right now?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I know I saw Chimura's thing yesterday where he was talking about Ed Policy coming in and giving him an ultimatum.
Yeah.
I think that's how Mark Chimura thinks, which is fine. He's allowed to think that way, right? I don't think that's how Mark Murphy or Ed Policy think. I don't suspect for a moment that anyone is going to talk to Brian in that regard, as far as you've got X number of years to win a championship, or even say anything even close to you're on the hot seat, or even allude to it. I think when you pull back and look 30,000 feet from where this roster and team was when Brian came on board, which was in, I'm not going to say disrepair, but not in a great spot, right? At the end of the Ted tenure, things really kind of fell down. I'm not going to say off the cliff, but they fell down, right?
Yeah.
And to build up a team that was within one play, essentially, of the Super Bowl in 2020, and then to turn around and trade Aaron away, rip the Band-Aid off, completely remake the roster into the youngest team in the league 2 years running, and make the playoffs those first 2 years out of the gate with your new quarterback and your new team. It's not easy to do. And I understand it's frustrating watching this team lose in the playoffs. I do understand from a fan standpoint, like, we're sick of this. We want to get back to the Super Bowl. Trust me, no one understands that more than Brian Gutekunst, right? So, but I do think the way the Packers operate, and I think this will continue under Ed Policy, they are very much forward-thinking, long-term thinking. And I think if you pull back and look at long-term how Brian has done, he's done a pretty damn good job. Now, is he perfect? Has he made every call correctly? No, of course not. No GM does. But on balance, comparative to his peers, in his situation, what he's been handed and had to kind of deal with and work with, he's done a really good job.
And the other thing is, do you ever think that Packers are going to draft the offensive player in the first round?
Right. I mean, it's crazy to think Jordan Love is the only one in Brian's tenure, at least, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was.
I mean, everybody else has been defense, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I don't. Will they ever? I guess it's possible. But man, they did draft Jordan Morgan last year. It's an offensive tackle. I know most people are thinking, we want a wide receiver, or a tight end, or a running back, or whatever. But they usually want to make long-term investments, which is what the first-round pick is. With the fifth-year option, you can have 5 years of control as the team.
True. Yeah,
they want that mostly, not always, but mostly at premium positions, which are quarterback, offensive tackle, edge rusher, cornerback. And those are the positions that they've mostly kind of looked at or focused on. Now, they have taken the safety. They took Darnell Savage a couple years ago in the first round, so it's not tried and locked in, but I do think more often than not, they're going to probably go defense and go for those types of players, whether it is an edge rusher or a corner. I do think this year there's a decent chance they take a defensive tackle, but on balance throughout, history, at least modern Packers history, those are the areas and the positions they want to invest in long term.
And there is a rumor out there that they might be trading for like a edge rusher,
Yeah.
especially with the Cincinnati Bengals with trade. Do you think that's a plausible trade?
I go back and forth on this. I guess I wouldn't be shocked, right, if we woke up one morning before the
Yeah,
draft and there was a headline, Packers have traded their first round pick and whatever else
yeah.
for Trey Hendrickson, right? I do know there has been reporting around the Bengals and Hendrickson that they are still talking and they are trying to get a deal done. And that might happen, even after signing the two wide receivers to their mega deals.
Good God,
I
that was,
know, right? I mean, it would be crazy, but it could be done, right? They're probably having to kick some major cans down the street to do
oh
it.
yeah.
But I do think there's a chance that he remains available and maybe, just maybe, it's a underlying italicized maybe the Packers can pull that off, but I don't think it's likely. I do think they'll probably have called about it. I know from the reporting around it, it sounds like the Bengals are asking for a ridiculous amount in return. This is why no one wants to engage.
Yeah,
But we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, any team who traded away a superstar like that, they're gonna ask for a ridiculous trade package.
I mean, you would think that's where it would start, right? At least at the beginning of negotiations, you
Yeah.
want to aim high, right?
Oh yeah.
I would suspect, though, teams are going to come back. Maybe the Packers have come back and said, look, the guy is 30. You know, he has been insanely consistent and stayed on the field.
Oh yeah.
But giving up a premium selection in the draft, especially a first round pick where you have 5 years of control on a player,
Oh yeah.
it starts to get a little dicey. But for the Packers, it's like 23. It's not like you're trading away a top 10 pick.
No.
I think that's something they would entertain, but I don't know how likely it is. This feels unlikely.
Well, I don't mind about the 23rd pick going to them, but if we do trade the number one pick away,
Mm-hmm.
we have to give that guy a brand new high contract.
Big time, a huge contract. Yes.
That's gonna be.
Which is, but at the same time, that's fine, right? I mean, not only can they make it work, yes, they'd have to do a little gymnastics on
Yeah.
the cap, but they can make it work. Also, you have to pay for talent, and it's
Yeah,
like
that's true.
this guy has been way more consistent than anybody on the Packers roster, and he gets to the quarterback, and it doesn't matter how teams try to block him, whether they use help, whether they try and use their best tackle, it doesn't matter. And that's something that hasn't existed in Green Bay in a long time, probably since like Clay Matthews' second season, where he was simply unstoppable, right?
Oh, he was.
Hendrickson's kind of like that, Now that it's a different position, he's a 4-3 end rather than a outside backer. But the idea being, he's going to cost a lot of money, no question about it. But he's worth it, especially because he changes the entire kind of viewpoint of the offensive coordinator and how he approaches attacking your defense. They've got to account for him on each and every snap, which should, you would think, also help Rashawn Gary and company as they're trying to get to the quarterback.
And some of my subscribers and we were having this argument about Luke Van Ness.
Yes.
Is he a bust or is he just not there yet?
Well, the hopeful Packer fan in me thinks the latter, but he's definitely, seemingly printed out his boarding pass to Bustville. I just think it hasn't looked good these first 2 years. Now, the caveat there is defensive line, in particular in the NFL, does take a while for a guy to become consistently productive, right?
Yes,
the worry with Van Ness is he can't get on the field. Like Enagbare is playing ahead of him. I mean, Brenton Cox Jr. is getting more snaps than him, and he's a former 13th overall pick. So but on the flip side, and this I keep trying to keep this in perspective for myself more than anything, is last year was his third defensive scheme in as many years. He played at Iowa. His final year at Iowa was in a particular scheme, and then he played in Joe Barry's scheme for a year, and then now last year was his first year in this scheme with Jeff Hafley. So the hope for me is okay, this young kid, not only is he maturing, but now he's finally going to be in the same scheme 2 years in a row for the first time in 4 years. So hopefully that familiarity helps him out a little bit. Now, you can talk about scheme all you want. None of that changes the fact that he's got to win a one-on-one. He's got
Oh
to be
yeah,
able to beat a tackle. And right now, we haven't seen much of that.
no.
We've seen hustle. He has gotten some hustle sacks, right? But as far as winning one-on-ones, that has been very absent in his game, and that is something the Packers desperately need to happen.
Yeah. We do need a pass rush.
Absolutely.
We have no pass rush at all.
Very much so. I mean, especially when they only rush 4 guys. And,
Yeah.
Hafley did as much as he could as far as, coming up with good sim pressures or exotic pressures.
Yeah.
And for certain teams, that works, right? Like the Texans, they took the Texans apart with that
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Oh
The
yeah.
Titans, too, right?
Yeah.
Even against the Eagles, they did an okay job. But when they rushed 4, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And that's got to change. I think Brian's talked about it. Matt's talked about it. That absolutely has to change because you can't keep trying to like gin up pressure because offensive coordinators eventually get what you're trying to do and they know how to block it up and they know how to take advantage of it. And that did happen against the Vikings, for instance, especially in that second game.
Oh God.
It's just something where you've really got to be able to let the hounds loose, so to speak, with 4 guys up front and be able to play a lot of different stuff on the back end.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like the Eagles.
Yeah, they do a great job of just using those 4 guys up front. And you saw it in the Super Bowl. That's all they had to do.
Yeah, that's all they had to do. So let me ask you, on defense, which player do you think is going to take the next step under the second year of Jeff Hassan's defense?
Well, I think we saw the start of Edgerrin Cooper becoming a
Oh,
star,
yeah.
right? Like, no question about it. But I also think Evan Williams, if he is able to stay healthy, because I do think he was on his way to becoming having a pretty special rookie year until he got hurt, right? And he missed some time. But I think he's a really, really good player who's only scratched the surface, And the fact that you could get both of those guys, hopefully for the full season, that really changes the whole dynamic of your defense.
Oh yeah,
like you talk about really kind of hitting on 2 guys. I think Brian did so with those 2 very young players.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you talk about guys I expect to like take a noticeable jump. Those are the 2 that I have circled.
Yeah. And do you think we should pick up the 5th-year option on Quay Walker?
Not for Quay. I think they'll sign him to some kind of extension at some point, maybe even in season, because I think they love him. And I do think
he looked coming off.
He looked good coming off the injury. I think he seems to have finally found a good fit in that scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And hell, playing next to Edgerrin Cooper certainly helps you, right? Like
that would.
But the problem is the 5th-year option is, an insane. The number is insane. He'd be if they exercise the 5th-year option, he'd be one of the top 5 inside linebackers payment wise, and that's not going to happen. So, like I said, I think they'll let that ride through maybe into the season, but they'll probably try to sign him to some kind of extension. It doesn't automatically mean he'll sign it. Maybe he wants to try and hit the market.
Yeah.
Maybe he thinks he can get a good deal, especially if he has a good year in 2025, right? But as far as Devontae Wyatt, I think there's a decent chance that they pull the trigger there. I think that would probably make a little bit more sense. But even then, that wouldn't surprise me if they didn't pull that one either and try to sign him to an extension as well. But I do think they want both guys sticking around.
Yeah. So what do you think the next step is for the Packers to ultimately get to the Super Bowl?
I mean, look, I talked about it a little bit 2 days ago on CheeseHead TV. Right now, sitting here in mid-March or approaching late March, pass rush is the number one concern, and there's no question about it. Now, I have zero doubt they have a plan, right, about they've got a new defensive line coach. They're probably going to draft a couple guys, maybe even continue to kind of poke around in free agency. But to me, that is the one area that could really sink this team. The fact that you're going to sit there, especially later in the year against maybe the better offenses in the playoffs, you've got to be able to get some heat on the quarterback without resorting to sending pressure all the time. And look, sitting here right now, I don't see it. But like I said, they've got a plan. I say it all the time. These folks know way more about football they've forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, right? So I got to think that they have a lot of faith in their ability to improve from within, guys like Lucas Van Ness, but also Aaron Mosby, Brenton Cox Jr., guys like that who, you would think hopefully another year in this system, this scheme, Halfley having a better handle on what guys do well, where guys struggle, etc. That should help produce some more results. But ultimately, once kickoff comes, you got to be able to win a one-on-one with your four guys. And
you're right about
sitting
that.
here right now, I don't see it. But again, I'm sure they've got a plan, and I can't wait to see it materialize.
Yeah, I mean, we still have the draft. We still have mini camps,
Yep.
OTAs.
OTAs, then training camp. I love going to training camp. I love going to camp. It's the best time to see all the new young players, but see kind of like the team for the first time, pads on, hitting, getting work done. That's my favorite time of the year.
I wish I could go to one of the OTAs, but
well, you should.
I
head on out.
I live way across the.
I feel you, man. Yeah, it's a lot of travel.
Yes. Yeah. So, the final question is: what do you think about the rumors about Aaron Rodgers might sign with the rival Minnesota Vikings?
The Vikings, right? Well, it sounds like there was a couple of reports this morning, actually, that they are going to stick with J.J. McCarthy and they're not going to pursue Aaron Rodgers. Now,
really?
Yeah, I mean, okay, why did it take how many, like a week plus for them to say that, right?
Yeah, to come out with that.
I do think maybe they were thinking about it, but it sounds like they're going to go with McCarthy, which it'll be interesting. A team that's coming off 14 wins, handing the keys over to a guy who missed his entire rookie year. It's coming off a pretty significant injury. I don't know, man. I mean, they've got the weapons, right? They brought back Aaron Jones. They've got Justin Jefferson. They got Addison. And they got the great tight end. It's not like he's going to be hurt. That's a good situation for the guy to walk into, but I don't know. That's a big leap of faith. And look, it's not like the Packers haven't done that, right? As far as when they turned the ball over gave the ball to Aaron Rodgers or gave the ball to Jordan Love. That's how we've operated. So, but yeah, I don't like if Aaron had gone there, I thought it would have been amazing. It would have been so much fun. It would have been great to root against him, but now, hey, he could still become a Steeler. If he becomes a Steelers quarterback, don't forget, or the Giants. Packers play all those teams this year. So if we do get Rodgers in a Steelers uniform, I suspect we'll probably get some kind of prime time showdown between Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, if that happens, I think it might be the Ireland game where they play in Ireland.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the case. There's been a lot of cold water thrown on that idea over the course of the last couple of months. I still holding out hope that they go to Ireland. I really want it to happen, but
that'd be cool.
I suspect the Packers have kind of been very clear that they do not want to go. And they did the Brazil thing last year. They did London a couple of years ago. I think the Packers have said, like, we definitely don't want to do this. We're happy to go next year, but we would not really prefer not to go over this year. I do think the NFL wants them to go. So
of course.
And ultimately they got to do what the NFL says. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, of course. So, well, yeah, that's all that is. Thank you for the interview. I really appreciate it. And I just want to thank Tom for setting this up.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to get your text, and I really appreciate being asked to be on, and really lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
You too. I'm honored that I could interview. It's a big honor.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And is there anything that you want to promote?
Not really. I mean, head to CheeseHead TV if you like the Packers. That's pretty much it. That's what we do. It's all we're about. 365 Packers fans worldwide. That's our dedication.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have
a great day.
You
go
too.
Pack, go.
Go Pack, go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.